Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's reflections on the life and leadership lessons from Surah al-Kahf, where we're continuing on from last week, based upon this book by Professor Dr. Hassan Mohi-ud-Din Qadri. We're going to go through a verse by verse reflection of verses 32 to 44 of the ayah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tell them the parable of two men. For one of them we made two gardens of grapevines, and we surrounded them both with date palms and placed cornfields between them. The verse sets the stage for a parable deeply rooted in divine wisdom. The blessings described, grapevines, date palms, and corn, symbolize abundance and beauty, reflecting Allah's favor upon one of the two men. Yet the Quran immediately positions these gifts within the framework of a moral story, reminding the listener that even the best worldly blessings are part of a test. The verse illustrates the concept of resource allocation and privilege in leadership. One individual is granted superior assets, symbolizing leaders who inherit wealth, power, or influence. However, the narrative that follows warns that privilege without perspective breeds pride. Leaders must recognize that their resources are not a result of their merit alone, but divine trust requiring accountability. This is a point that is often missed. When people do well, they often think their wealth is everything that they've built up and it's all from them and their work. And of course, their work is certainly a part of it, especially if they've worked hard for it. But that's not the only factor in them getting wealthy. That's not the only factor in them owning property. Consider there are so many others who might have worked just as hard, maybe even harder, and they've not been able to be as anything like as successful. And there are others who maybe didn't work as hard and they've been even more successful, whether they started from money or not. So clearly there are other factors at play. It's not simply a case that what you earn or what you have is a result of your own work. Even if we just think about this very logically. But when you take into account the fact that we must consider these factors, when you take into account that, there's a huge amount of luck involved for many people, no matter how well you plan, no matter what you do, there is a lot that you benefit from being in the right place at the right time. Who plans that? Who plans you being in the right place at the right time? Sometimes we can do something ourselves to make things easier. We can network, we can put ourselves in places where we might benefit from that connection. But sometimes it doesn't happen like that. A friend of mine told me a story about how they met a business person recently and got a business opportunity. And they were actually joking around with them at an event. They didn't realize who they were and they were joking around. But because the person liked them, they actually gave them a business opportunity. Completely out of the blue. So, we say completely out of the blue or unexpected or coincidence when we don't take the divine into account. This is how people generally speak. But as believers, we understand that this is actually all part of Allah's plan. And Allah allows these things to happen for reasons that are sometimes beyond our understanding. But what we can realize is that Allah understands a lot more than we understand by an enormous margin. that we cannot, it's infinite margin even. So the thing is, there's a lot we wouldn't understand about why Allah does some of the things that Allah does. We're trying to understand the unimaginable, almost incomprehensible. And reading from the signs, the fact that we understand anything at all is itself a kind of miracle when you consider everything at play. But when you take the divine into account, then you realize that maybe this isn't coincidence, maybe this isn't out of the blue. But even then, whichever way you want to look at it, we can certainly tell that the wealth that a person has, that they earn, that they own, although an aspect of that is a product of their own work, it certainly isn't all their own work. So a degree of humility should come into play here. And as the Prophet said, it is both a blessing and a test. Verse 33, both gardens produced their fruits and did not fall short in any way. And we caused a river to gush through them. Here, the parable highlights perfection and sustainability in provision. The gardens are not only productive, but also continuously nourished by flowing water, symbolizing divine care and uninterrupted blessing. This abundance makes the eventual arrogance and denial of the man all the more unjustifiable. This verse speaks to the efficiency and flourishing of well-managed systems. For a leader, consistent productivity and reliable supply chain, symbolized by the river, are signs of good management. However, this should inspire gratitude and humility, not superiority. A wise leader credits the system's success to all collective effort and divine favor, not personal greatness. See, I mean, it is a beautiful example that both gardens produced their fruits and did not fall short in any way. We caused a river to gush through them. The river is deeply symbolic in this and shows that Allah sends His blessing down upon all. And then people can be unappreciative of what Allah provides. But here, in terms of leadership and management and understanding business in a more modern sense, we can take the river as being symbolic of supply chains, of systems that we work with. Reality is, not one of those systems is owned or managed by any one single person. So many people are involved. So when they work, and when they work effectively, we have to have a certain degree of humility and appreciate the contributions made by everyone within that system. Because should any of those like links in the chain, like a chain, it's got links together. Should any one of those links in the chain break, the system falls apart. So they're all important. And whatever success, whatever benefit we get from that is the benefit of the whole and not any one of the parts. Verse 34, and he possessed abundant wealth and fruits. So he said to his companion as he argued with him, I am greater than you in wealth and stronger in number, i.e. in family and followers. And this is another thing, stronger in number. People always want to belong to the biggest group, the most successful group. I remember something that I got involved in some years ago, and the person said to me, we have to make this the biggest group. We have to recruit so many people. We have to be, and I'm like, that's not the point. Of course, we hope if we're doing something good that everybody can benefit and it can expand. But the point is to be on haqq, is to be on truth, is to be doing the right thing. It's not about the size. You could have a much smaller group, but everyone is sincere and doing things in the best way for the right reasons, appreciating each other. That's actually going to be much better and much nicer to be a part of and more beneficial for everyone concerned than being part of a larger group which has lost its way. So although size can matter, it can be important, but it's not the only factor involved, and certainly shouldn't be the main thing when it comes to matters of spirituality. And even when it comes to business, a small successful company can even make a lot of money, depending on what it's involved in. You look at Arm. Arm, I don't think is a huge company, but Arm makes all of the blueprints for the Arm processors, which are found in these mobile devices and now laptops and also tablets. And so, you can't make them without the blueprints. So even though maybe they're not so huge as some of the companies, they're certainly important. And I mean, that should be, I should imagine, I haven't checked the stocks, but I'm sure it's financially lucrative because so many mobile devices and phones are based upon their work. So yeah, it just struck me when I read this, and stronger in number, because it is always the thing that people are looking at, numbers. When the Prophet ﷺ started teaching in Mecca, he was one man teaching in a society that had lost its way. The same is true of Abraham, peace be upon him. Same is true of Moses, peace be upon them all. I mean, each time it was one man reminding people of what Allah had taught, of the guidance. Eventually, the numbers increased because it was based upon truth. It was based upon good things. It was based upon sincerity, compassion, righteousness. So, of course, eventually it grew and the message caught on. But it was not size that began it. It was size that grew because of what was being taught. And even with business, if you look at some successful businesses that have done really well, in many cases, it's because they produce a good product. It's the quality of the product. It's the consistency of the product. The fact that they have quality control and they're always producing what you get, what you expect, and for a reasonable value. And so people appreciate that, so they'll keep going back to the company. But if they start changing too much, then people will move away and they will go to other companies. This verse reveals the heart of the test. Arrogance born from affluence. The wealthy man's pride blinds him to the truth and leads him to belittle his companion. The verse warns against spiritual decay when blessings are not accompanied by gratitude and humility. This is a classic example of toxic leadership and elitism. The speaker equates the material success and manpower with superiority, a dangerous mindset in any organization. Effective leaders uplift others, value humility, and avoid comparisons that diminish teamwork or morale. Arrogance isolates, humility unites. Verse 35. And he went into his garden, wronging himself by way of arrogance. He said, I do not think that this will ever perish. Again, mistake a lot of people make. They think that their blessings on this earth, that their wealth, their property, their family even, are permanent. And they take it for granted. We must show gratitude. We must show appreciation. We must show some humility. Otherwise, we stand to lose all of those things. Either because we rub people the wrong way and they move away from us, or and not appreciate them, or because of karma and the divine order of things. That if you don't appreciate what Allah has granted you, Allah can just as easily take it from you. The phrase wronging himself is powerful. It implies that arrogance is self-inflicted harm. His illusion of permanence reflects a disconnection from reality and divine power. He mistakes the temporary world for eternity, forgetting that all things return to Allah. The verse is a cautionary reflection on leaders who idolize their own success and believe that their organizations are untouchable. Such overconfidence can blind leaders to risk, undermine contingency planning, and make them ignore the natural rise and fall of fortunes. A wise leader plans for change and remains aware of vulnerability. And that's the other thing as well. Change will happen. Even if you do all the right things, you look at Jamaica recently, beautiful city by the sea, and look what that hurricane did to it. And that's just but one example. It might not necessarily be an act of divine punishment. It could simply be the weather. This is the nature of this earth. It's always in change. It's always in flux. We know that weather will happen. We know volcanoes will happen and earthquakes will happen. A wise leader plans for that as far as they're able, so that if you have some difficulty like that come along, then you're better able to manage it. Verse 36. And I do not think that the hour will ever come, and even if I am returned to my Lord, I will surely find a resort better than this. Here the man denies the hereafter, or assumes his worldly success guarantees divine favor. And this is another mistake that as people have made throughout history. People think that because they're successful here on earth in a materialistic way, that they are so blessed by the gods or by God, depending upon their perspective, because people used to believe in many. And they don't think that that will ever be removed from them. But it's as I'll continue with what the Sheikh says. This is spiritual delusion, where success breeds entitlement and denial of accountability. It exposes the flaw of measuring divine love by material wealth. Some leaders equate corporate or public success with moral uprightness, assuming they are beyond criticism or consequence. The verse warns against complacency and ethical blindness. Leadership is not about reward alone. It demands responsibility, foresight, and moral clarity. Bismillah. Verse 37. His companion said to him while conversing with him, do you disbelieve in him who created you, i.e., your father Adam, from dust, and then developed you from zygote, and then fashioned you as a man? The believing companion reminds the arrogant man of his origin, a humble and dependent creation of Allah. This verse reorients the heart back to the Creator, confronting pride with the reality of human fragility and divine craftsmanship. This verse is a call to self-awareness in leadership. It reminds leaders to remember their beginnings, humble starts, collective support, and divine providence. Grounded leaders are more compassionate, open to feedback, and less likely to exploit their position. Verse 38. But he is Allah, my Lord, and I do not ascribe any partner to my Lord. A clear declaration of Tawheed. This verse centers the believer's loyalty and reverence for Allah alone. By rejecting all forms of pride and association, the companion embodies humility and spiritual clarity. In leadership, this reflects unwavering ethical commitment and clarity of purpose. A principled leader does not compromise values for temporary gain or worldly alliances. They remain anchored in truth, even in the face of opposition or arrogance. Verse 39. And why did you not say when you entered the garden, this is what Allah has willed? There is no power except in Allah. If you see that I am lesser than you in wealth and children. This verse teaches the etiquette of attributing success to Allah through MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah, recognizing that all power and provision come from Allah, keeps the heart humble and blessings protected. Attributing success to divine support and teamwork rather than personal ego cultivates a culture of gratitude and collaboration. Such leaders remain modest, empowering others and safeguarding their organizations from the spiritual disease of arrogance. See, it's the culture that you develop, especially with an organization, and the more people that are involved. If you cultivate a culture in which everyone feels appreciated, in which you're all working together and you all kind of collectively own your work, people feel more committed to the organization. People feel more committed to putting their best in and doing their best work because they're appreciated and supported and they feel part of the work that they are doing. But if you take people for granted or belittle them or claim all the success for yourself that other people have contributed their hard work to, how are they going to feel? It's a very toxic environment, and people will not put their best work in. As soon as they find another job, they're going to go for it. Verse 40. Perhaps my Lord will grant me something better than your garden and send down upon your garden thunderbolts from the sky so that it becomes a flattened plain. The believer expresses hope in Allah's justice and provision, showing that true worth is not measured in worldly standards. His trust in divine wisdom is unshaken, even in material disparity. This models resilience and vision for leaders, even when facing resource limitations or competition. Believing in one's mission and staying committed to one's core values eventually yields better and more meaningful outcomes. Verse 41. Or its water may sink so deep into the ground, and you will never be able to obtain it again. The believer warns of the fragility of worldly success. Water, the symbol of life and sustenance, could disappear overnight if Allah willed. This highlights the dependency of all blessings on divine will. No system is immune to collapse. Overdependence on material resources without strategic foresight and spiritual humility can lead to failure. Leaders must be vigilant, grateful, and prepared for change at any time. We now know, thanks to modern science, that there's so many things that can happen. As I mentioned earlier, changes in the weather, which probably was what happened here, especially with climate change, that, whatever its causes is certainly affecting people today. Geological events like earthquakes and volcanoes, even astronomical events. We could be hit by an asteroid or comet, or one could come close to the Earth and some parts could come off, which would actually impact our environment. And this could be in all sorts of different ways. It's surprising, actually, when you consider all of these factors, how stable our life on the Earth is. We're one small planet orbiting around a thermonuclear star. It's mind-boggling when you think about it. We're in space with rocks and comets flying all around us. And any one of them could hit the Earth again, like it did in the time of the dinosaurs. actually all the time meteors and asteroids are hitting the Earth, but they're usually small, tiny. But there's still the potential for a meteor to hit the Earth that is larger, that could cause significant regional destruction or even global catastrophe. And this is why NASA and other space organizations now are monitoring near-Earth objects. So we now know there's so many different things that can happen, and just how fragile our life on this planet is. There's really no room, when you understand this, for arrogance. We just have to be humble and grateful for whatever time we have here and the blessings that Allah has granted us. And we must also, as it mentions here, leaders must be vigilant, grateful, and prepared for change at any time, because there's all sorts of factors here that can change. And that's not even including human-made disasters, such as wars and economic problems that are caused by countries falling out and incurring tariffs upon each other, which sets the economy and supply chains in all sorts of disarray. Verse 42. And so it happened, his faults were entirely destroyed. His fruits, were entirely destroyed. And he began to wring his hands over what he had invested, while it had collapsed on its trellises. And he was saying, I wish I had not ascribed any partner to my Lord. This is the turning point. Allah strips the arrogant man of his blessings. Now remorse replaces pride, but repentance after destruction, without prior humility, it comes too late. He realizes his mistake, associating success with self and not Allah. A dramatic example of leadership collapse. When ego clouds vision, leaders ignore signs and lose everything. Crisis often leads to regret, but wise leaders practice humility before the fall, not just after. Verse 43. He had no group to help him besides Allah, nor could he help himself. This verse shows the futility of relying on numbers, wealth, or power when divine support is withdrawn. True help is only with Allah, and human strength vanishes in the face of his will. This reflects the downfall of isolated authoritarian leaders. No team, network, or influence can shield a leader from collapse if integrity is lost. Sustainable leadership is rooted in ethics, community, and accountability. And we see this. There have been examples of leaders, even spiritual leaders. I mean, if you look at the prophets, classic examples of this. They were initially on their own, but they had integrity and sincerity like no other. And they had Allah on their side. Even though they were initially alone and shortly after small in number, and they overcome tremendous obstacles. We even see the same thing in the business world, where small companies have arose who had very few people there, but because they did good business, they were fair and honest with people, they gave people a good product for a reasonable price, excellent customer service, treated people with respect and value, and also respected their employees. These businesses quickly expanded and were successful. And we've seen other examples of large companies that were initially very successful, been around for decades, and collapsed because of bad leadership and bad management. We've seen a few within the United Kingdom over the past decade or two. Companies that used to be on the high street, like British Home Stores, collapsed. So really, integrity, ethics, community, treating people right, these still very important to this day. No matter how business changes, no matter how much of it goes online, because even an online company, if you when you have an issue, if they have great customer services, you appreciate it. If they sell you good products for a reasonable price and treat you ethically, fairly, and honestly, decently, and value their employees as well, they're going to go on and be successful. But if if they have shortcomings in any of these particular areas, they're going to end up suffering at some point. Verse 44. In this situation, the only protection is that of Allah, the real God. He is the best in rewarding and the best in requiting. The story concludes with a deep truth. Only Allah is the ultimate refuge, the fairest judge, and the true rewarder. Earthly illusions fade, but divine justice remains eternal and absolute. In the end, leadership is not judged by public image or material legacy, but by moral impact and sincerity of purpose. True leadership is God consciousness, service driven, and accountable before the ultimate judge. Conclusion. This parable from Surah al-Kahf is more than a moral tale. It is a divine blueprint for responsible living and ethical leadership. It teaches that material blessings are fleeting and pride in them leads to downfall. Only humility, gratitude, and a heart centered on Allah can ensure lasting success. For today's leaders, the story is a timeless warning. Do not be intoxicated by power, wealth, or numbers. What endures is not the size of your garden or business, but the sincerity of your soul and the strength of your values. Hope you found that beneficial and useful. And I think we'll conclude it there today. And see you probably next Friday, hopefully. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it yesterday. Some things came up. And if you find these videos useful and the other content I produce, please consider buying me a coffee with my Buy Me a Coffee link. And if you subscribe and you support that, this will help me to invest my time and efforts into producing more content and better quality content. And you will also be taking part in the blessings of the work which I do, because I intend to keep producing these and to keep these videos and content free at the point of contact so that everybody can benefit from them. But at the same time, I'm investing my time and energies and effort into this. Not everyone is able to do that, but maybe you could be able to support what I'm doing. And in so doing, you can take part in the blessings as well. And whether you do that or not, I mean, if you can continue to like and subscribe to my channels and to my videos, and to share these videos and content with people that you may find you think may be interested, this would be greatly appreciated. I wish you all a wonderful evening if you're in the UK, and wherever you are, a wonderful weekend. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings and mercy of God be with you all.